What's up everyone, you got Mind Circus here with you, and welcome to Mind Over Meta Open World Builds, and today we're going to be taking a look at Condi Tempest, or another look at Condi Tempest. Before we get started, if you are new to Guild Wars 2, new to the channel, just haven't done so yet, I am currently farming likes and subscribes in an effort to build the channel, and if you want to hook me up with one of those just below the video, that would be fantastic. And with that out of the way, hey, let's get into it. So what I felt were some of the more intriguing changes in the balance patch that came out on June 28th was the addition of Alacrity to Tempest and Quickness to Herald. Tempest particularly, if you have followed the channel, you know I'm a really big Ellie enjoyer. I play a lot of Elementalist, and specifically Tempest being one of my top 3 specs in the game. I really do enjoy the gameplay of Tempest. And the idea of getting Alacrity on this was a really big deal to me. Now, for those of you guys who may not be in the know or may not pay attention to these kind of things, Alacrity is quite simply a boon that reduces your cooldowns. So the goal here on this build was strong damage, high sustain, and to perma Alacrity on my party. Is it possible? Well, yeah. Now, according to the design notes, they expected the Alacrity to be viable on fresh air builds, which is all well and good, but that would lock us into power for our DPS as far as I'm concerned. Now, it certainly is viable under fresh air builds, but it's not my favorite way to play Elementalist. It just really isn't. I personally find that power builds on Elementalist, if we are looking for an open world generalist, just don't always kind of cut the mustard for me. Really, I find the power builds on Elementalist for open world to be a little bit glassy for my liking. I do like playing power builds in, say, instance content or somewhere where I'm getting support. But what I was really looking to do here was take my old tried and true Condi Tempest and pump out perma Alacrity with it. So, does it work? Absolutely. Is it good? It is absolutely fantastic. I am a really big fan of this one, and I'm excited to share this with you guys because, like I say, big Ellie enjoyer. I think this build is super strong, and I'm hoping you're going to take some value from it. So with all that said, hey, let's go over and get into building gear, which is going to be a little complicated this time. So if you are at all used to my videos, what you are expecting at this point is for me to get into gear, but I'm going to start with build first this time. There's a reason for that. I think there's a lot of things we need to talk about with the gear on this one, and the build is going to stay static between any changes in gear that we do. So let's go ahead and start with our build here. Let's get into it. We're talking about Earth, we're talking about Fire, we're talking about Tempest. Nothing in here is probably anything you've never seen before. If you've visited my channel for an Elementalist build, this is kind of my favorite way to set up a Condi Tempest. What we're looking at here is Earth with Serrated Stones, Strength of Stone, and Written in Stone. These are Condi damage increases. This here, Written in Stone, will allow us a little bit of passive sustain. What we're going to get under Fire here is Burning Precision, Burning Rage, and Pyromancer's Puissance. Again, nothing really out of the ordinary here. We're talking about burning damage, and that's about it. Let's look under Tempest here at this point. What we're going to be running here is Unstable Conduit. Overloads grant an aura based on your attunement. You've got a little bit of play on this one, okay? You could really choose either of these. If you're running in an area with a lot of CC being put on you, Gale Song's actually kind of nice, though it is on a fairly lengthy cooldown, but it is pretty useful. Okay, latent stamina granting vigor to nearby allies when attuning to water. This is not bad, okay, and restoring endurance. So this means more dodges, which is really good. And this, though, Unstable Conduit, probably your best bet at this point. Now, over here, we have Harmonious Conduit. Gain stability and swiftness when starting an overload. We will be overloading constantly on this build. Your other option here on this one is Tempestuous Aria, which is using a shout, grants allies might, and inflicts enemies with weakness. I did not get nearly as much value off this trait on this build, but if you're going for a straight-up DPS build, you may get better value here. But here, we're getting a whole lot of stability and some swiftness. So I'm going to actually default you to this one on this one. And finally, the trait where all the magic happens, we will be using Lucid Singularity. Upon successfully completing an overload, apply Alacrity to nearby allies. That's 12 and a quarter seconds of 25% recharge rate on your skills. This is really what I was looking to play with on this build, and it really works really well. So with that said, hey, let's take a look at the gear. So those of you paying attention will probably notice that I have swapped tunes at this point. I've been maintaining two different gear sets as I've been testing this, so let's get into it here. I'm going to pull up the first gear set. This is the higher DPS version, and what we're going to be running here, okay, is Ritualist gear. The reason why we're running Ritualist gear is obviously for condition damage and expertise and concentration. The Vitality is a nice little bump to our survivability. It's pretty sweet. You will also notice here that 4 of my trinkets here are actually exotics. I'm not in the place where I can quickly get the Ritualist's gear in Ascended when it comes to the trinkets. So what I went ahead and did was just go and craft some. They are actually pretty cheap to craft, so not a huge kind of dump in terms of the stats, but not, optimal. You really would, if you want to play this, get these going in Ascended at that point. But there we have it. The rest, everything else is, of course, in, all right, Ritualist gear at the Ascended level. In terms of weapons, we're going to be running Dagger and we're going to be running Warhorn. I don't think Dagger, Warhorn are at all negotiable on this build, to be honest with you. Though you may get some good results with Scepter, I stuck with Dagger on this one. The Warhorn, you absolutely need to upkeep the Alacrity. So there we go. That is our first set with the gear. This is a higher DPS version. If you want to get into, of course, the damage, this is the way to do it. And now back to where we started. Let's take a look at the gear that I actually found where my sweet spot was. And that is running our good old pal Celestial gear. Now, when it comes to the Celestial gear, obviously we're getting a little bit of everything on this. Which do I like better? I absolutely prefer the Celestial on this one. The damage is not that much lower than it was in the Ritualist gear. It is much easier on this setup to maintain the Alacrity. I am a really, really big fan of the way this is set up. So again, run it in Ritualists for a little bit higher damage. And when I say a little bit, I'm talking about 15% or so, 10 to 15% higher damage than running it in the Celestial gear, but my sweet spot was the Celestial gear. Now, let's take a couple of minutes and talk about runes on this one. I tested out a lot of different runes on this build. Up on your screen right now, you're going to see a few of the different options. I tried straight Condi damage, and then where I ended up settling and what felt best and coziest to me was our good old friend Traveler runes. These were absolutely the highest value in terms of the overall performance of the character. And I'm not just talking about damage. I'm talking about things like off healing. I'm talking about keeping up the Alacrity. The Traveler runes were absolutely the best here. But that said, if you are running in the Celestial gear and the Traveler runes, are not kind of giving you the performance that you want in terms of damage, you can absolutely go back and run the Condi damage ones that are up on your screen right now. In terms of the Condi damage ones that I've listed, there's less than 15% difference on those. Highest being Elementalist runes, really close being Balefire runes. Also keep in mind, though, down here on the sigils, if you end up running runes that are increasing your burning duration, this Smoldering sigil may not be your best bet, and you may want to go with a Sigil of Malice or something like that. But the way this all set up here at this point is really the way I liked it. Now, in terms of the sigils on this one, the Bursting sigil is absolutely non-negotiable. Other options down here include a smoldering sigil. I have it on this setup because the burning is not permit. If I'm running a burning set, I'm probably going to want to run something else in here. One of the other options, we'll talk about maintaining alacrity in the gameplay section, but one of the other options is absolutely to run a concentration sigil in here to give ourselves a little bit of breathing room on the alacrity. With the alacriity, there's a little bit of jimmy leg and keeping it up. So giving yourself a little bit of a benefit in terms of your boon duration goes a long way to making it comfortable. That said, this was the setup that I enjoyed. Feel free to mix and match in terms of the gear, okay, and the equipment with the Celestial versus the Ritualist. Feel free to mix and match the runes where you want, and feel free to min-max the sigils. My favorite sigils in this one, the way I have this set up, are obviously the Smoldering, the Bursting Sigil, and the Traveler runes. And there you have it. With all that said, hey, let's take a few minutes and let's get into some fashion. Fashion on this setup, not terribly complicated. Got a few different things going on here. What I have is the Adventurer's Scarf. The Adventurer's Scarf is a pretty easy to get piece of cosmetics. And in fact, I think you can go on the TP at this point, get it for about 30 silver, if I'm not mistaken. Absolutely cool little piece here, kind of suited the character that I'm creating here. So that is where I went on that. Now, I'm not running shoulders. I actually don't have them visible. I did try the scarf here, the racing scarf, which looked okay, but really was more happy with this without any kind of shoulder piece on that. So that is where I went. I'm running the fishing vest. Now, the fishing vest is gained in the new End of Dragons content. Specifically, you can pick up the fishing vest in Dragon's End at one of the vendors there. Really cool little cosmetic. And if you want to add the little fishing hat on that, I'm a fan. I'm a definite fan. Taking a look at the gloves, we will be using the Warlord's Arm Guards. The Warlord's Arm Guards on light are just some pretty simple gloves there. Not really anything much to them. We are using the Aetherblade Light Pants. The Aetherblade armor sets are absolutely from the gem store. They do rotate into the Blackline Statuette vendor at points, so if you're taking care of that, you may want to go ahead and just keep your eye on that vendor for when the Aetherblade pieces actually swap into it. Absolutely cheap and easy way to go, particularly if you're doing your weekly key farm. Going to be running the funerary shoes. The funerary shoes chosen again because they were pretty simple and just kind of hung out with the rest. Now, when we're looking at the weapons here, the weapons are, all right, the Molten Dagger, the Molten Weapons, if I am not mistaken, are gained in the Citadel of Flames dungeon. I would definitely recommend you go in and check that out if you would like to get some of those nice little kind of flaming effects on your weapons. Absolutely cool little set. And I'm going to be running Voice of Metal. Voice of Metal is one of the cooler war horns in the game that comes out like a little microphone. One of my favorite parts of Voice of Metal is the way that it actually changes the horn sounds to sound like you are screaming into a microphone. If you don't have this, you can get this in Grothmar Valley. Absolutely cool piece, and probably one of the few good uses for your hatch chilies, if I'm not mistaken. Quick little look at the dies here at this point. Let's pull this up. I am using on the scarf garnet. All right. On the chest piece here, I'm using Worn Bone, Lemon Shade, Enameled Brass. On the gloves, I'm using Gold Fusion and Enameled Banana. On the leggings, I'm using Wheat, Murky Gray, Enameled Brass. And on the boots, we are using Murky Gray, Enameled Brass, Gold Fusion, and Enameled Banana. And with all that said, hey, fashion is cool, but learning how to play things is cooler. Let us head off to the raid training area, and let's see what we can do about learning how to perma-alacrity on Tempest. Take a couple of quick seconds here before we get started. Let's take a look at the way that I have the bar set up. What I have here is Signet of Restoration, grants health every time you cast a spell. This is some nice little passive sustain. I have another Signet on here, which is Signet of Fire. Improves your critical chance while it's passive, but while it's active, you will burn your target and nearby foes. This is really good damage. This is really good damage. And really, we're running the Signets. If we pump this up here, we will take a look at one of the traits that I took, which is Signets gain reduced recharge and continue to grant their passive benefits while recharging. This really is kind of important in terms of our sustain, and it gives us the ability to fire Signet of Fire off whenever we want. The other things I'm going to be using here are Feel the Burn. I'm going to be using Feel the Burn because it's a might generator with a little bit of damage drop down on it. I really like this one. I also like Aftershock. I'm using Aftershock because it procs protection and magnetic aura and cripple and immob, but it's also a blast finisher, and when I talk about damage, you will see the usefulness of this. Finally here, I'm running Rebound. Rebound, kind of one of those situational abilities. If you're running this for damage, you could run the Summon on this one, but I like Rebound for the aura that procs off it, okay, when you run it, which is, I think, pretty powerful. Also going to give us a bit of Fury. Okay, so this is really good. But again, if I'm running for damage mainly, I'm going to run the Summon on this one, or I'm even going to run Fiery Greatsword. So let's get into it here, and let's talk about first permaing Alacrity on this build. Now, Alacrity on this build is actually gained, if you recall, by completing an overload. If you've never played Tempest before, what happens here is once you change attunements, you get a little cooldown here on your element, and on this we have the ability to do an overload. Each of these are a little bit different. We'll go over a couple of them here as we are explaining things, but once we've completed said overload, we get a nice little bump in Alacrity. That said, if you are camping just one element, this is not enough Alacrity to perma. It's off by quite a few seconds. There are a couple of things we need to do to keep up this Alacrity. Before I go on, let's talk about one thing that we can do to make this just a little bit easier for us. Let us pull up our inventory and let's talk a moment about food. We can obviously run condition damage food, okay, things like super veggie pizzas or compact quality tuning crystals, but in terms of making the Alacrity cozy, you may have to go in and just bump this up with food. And the way that I'm going to do this is with compact quality maintenance oils, okay, and boxed chocolate raspberry creams, which is a fair bit of Alacrity. Obviously, you can get better food than this. This is just the stuff that comes out of the portable World versus World provisioner that you can use for food at any point. So once we've done this, we've given ourselves a fair bit of a bump in our concentration, okay, which is our boon duration. Now we can also go ahead and put that concentration sigil into one of our weapons, and specifically into our Warhorn, which also can give us a little bit of breathing room in terms of the Alacrity. But still, if we go in here and we hit this, all right, let's take a look at where the Alacrity stands at that point. All right, so that's 12 seconds. We're still off considerably from permaing this. So there are two things that we need to do to perma this Alacrity. Number one is an ability here on Warhorn 4 under Earth that is called Sand Squall. Apply protection to your allies, then increase the duration of all boons currently existing on you and your allies, and gain magnetic aura. This is a really, really nice power. It also gives us 3 seconds of boon duration. So what we can go into here is go into this. Once that has procced and given us our Alacrity, we can blow our Warhorn at that point. And what we have here is we are now off still by about 2 seconds from permaing our Alacrity. What this means is we need to weave another overload into our rotation in order to perma that Alacrity. I'm going to take a couple of seconds here at this point and just ask ArenaNet why this isn't as easy to perma Alacrity as Renegade. Let's just put that out, or Mechanist, you know. Okay, so how are we going to perma the alacrity? It's going to be by using 2 overloads, and generally on this character, you are going to go ahead and just camp fire and earth on this one. So what we can do is we can go into here and we can hit our overload earth. All right, and if we're watching our boons now, there's our alacrity. We can extend that by 3 seconds with the Warhorn. We can pop over here into fire, and then when this is ready, we can go ahead. And you'll notice as we start building this up, that's going to become permanent at that point. Now we can go back in here and we can hit Sand Squall again when it's off cooldown to extend that. Then we can go ahead and we can hit the Earth Overload again. And then when we're ready, we can pop back into fire. And when that's ready, we can go ahead, and when we take a look, as we are going on, we are building that alacrity up with a bit of a buffer fairly easily. So with that said, let's start talking about how to do damage at the same time. Most of our damage is actually going to come while we are in Fire Attunement. We've got a few really potent skills. The auto attack is the auto attack, okay? But we get fairly big damage off Drake's Breath. We get fairly big damage off Burning Speed. Now, Burning Speed actually just puts us over here, and as long as the enemy is standing in that, they will take some burning damage. We also get a fair bit of our damage off the Fire Overload. So if we go here and we hit that Fire Overload, you will see that we start doing some damage. Now, really though, maximizing that damage will also be a little bit easier if we are generating some might. Now, we have a couple of things that we can use to generate might. As you see, we're already, without even trying, sitting here with a fair bit of might, and we're actually capped. But when it comes to actually generating that in the first place, what we want to do is keep in mind that we will be generating might off the Fire Overload. We also get might off Wildfire, because Wildfire is a combo field that we will put Aftershock down on. We also get might from Feel the Burn. And then we can take Heatsink, give stacks of might to yourself, then spread boons that you have to allies. This is really what we're going to be talking about, really kind of providing massive value to the people around us, even while we are running a build that is really strong solo. So a couple of seconds to take a look at the way that this all now comes together. I will start in fire. All right. I'll proc my might generator here. Put some damage down, spread those boons off, go into earth, fire that off, and there is my permanent alacrity, which will only get better as I continue. Then the moment I can, I will go back into earth, and I'll be swapping back and forth, obviously as quickly as I can for the first little while until that alacrity completely builds up. And if the need is there, I can obviously just go and pump into a different attunement if that is the kind of situation. But really, I can maintain that alacrity pretty comfortably there. If we take a look, that is a comfortable amount of alacrity. Couple of brief moments to talk about sustain on this build. As you will see, as we are fighting here, we are going to be generating a little bit of passive sustain. It's not a ton, but it is enough to generally keep us alive. Obviously, we have the ability to fire off our heal whenever we like. One thing to mention, if you don't like, okay, Signet of Restoration, you may want to put Wash the Pain Away in here. It's a very, very powerful self-heal, as well as a heal that actually helps other people. That said, the way that we've got this set up, we will stick with Signet of Restoration. But if we are running into situations where this amount of passive sustain is not good enough, we always just have the option of popping into Earth. Now, what is really important to know about popping into Earth is our big wins in terms of our sustain will be Water Globe and Tidal Surge. This is really big. We also get some CC break off this, so that's important. But then again, you know, before we go into anything else, let's go ahead and let's pop ourselves into a really nice big heal that we have overloaded with a lot of different little procs on it, so you can see that going into the water there is not only a really strong heal for other people, it is also going to give us regen, vigor, protection, swiftness, and stab. So if we are smart about this and we pop into this, we go and we fire off that water overload. The moment we go over into Earth again, we hit Sand Squall, we get that really nice bump to the length of those boons on there. So again, you know, this build is really kind of set it and forget it, but we have the ability for this off heal there. And keeping in mind that because we're running in celestial gear, hopefully, we will have the ability to make these meaningful to other people. And that gets back to what I was just saying about Signet of Restoration and replacing that with, say, Wash the Pain Away. That's a really powerful group heal, so keep that in mind. But the healing that comes off all these, good for other people as well, so we run into situations where we can help keep other people alive during those oh shit moments and really just provide a ton of value. All right, a couple of minutes here just to cap off our discussion by talking about crowd control. A couple of different wins here on this build. The biggest ones are going to be here on our utility bar. We are using Aftershock. Just a quick little talk here. I realize there's no stun break on the utility bar. Do keep in mind that when we get into the overloads, these can be stun breaks as well. They're also proccing a bunch of stability. So, you know, I realize that there's no stun break on the bar here. Not a big deal. What I will do here, though, for CC is I can go ahead and hit Aftershock. This is Cripple and a Mob. If we put that up, we'll see that bar starts to come down. Not bad. Not bad at all. Our other options here, the biggest ones are going to be under Water with Warhorn 4, which is a really nice Defiance break. Let's hit that. Okay. Pretty easy. If we go under air, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, this is one of the main reasons I will use air is for the following. First off, we can give ourselves Shocking Aura with Dagger 3. That means when we are hit, the enemy will be stunned. We can also transmute that aura for some CC, and we get a whole bunch of CC off Cyclone, which is a nice little pull. That honestly is the only real reason I'll pop into air on this build. And then under Earth, we also get some Cripple, okay, off the 2. And that's just a little bit more CC there. And that really is all you really kind of need. You get some blind, okay, off Duststorm, which can help, but isn't really big. The biggest wins are going to be under air, okay, with transmuting the Shocking Aura. And we will get a fair bit off Cyclone as well. Then going back into water, we'll get Tidal Surge. Those are the big ones in addition to Aftershock. So there we have it. This is Condi Tempest of the Alacrity variety, run in either Ritualists or Celestial gear. Make it your own. There's a lot of different options in terms of the runes and the sigils and the gear setup. Definitely go ahead and customize it to your own needs. A couple of reminders, 9 a.m. every Saturday morning, we do have a live stream here on YouTube. Definitely come and check it out. Come hang out with us. A little bit of tomfoolery and some memes. Definitely appreciate anybody who comes by and just hangs out and talks for a couple of hours with us. The other thing is, in the link in the description down below, there is a little blurb for the Mind Over Meta Discord. If you'd like to join us there, not a ton going on at this point, but we are just trying to build it, and if you want to come and hang out with us there, you are more than welcome to go ahead and do so. With all that said, I am going to thank you all very much for watching and making it to the end of this video. I'm going to remind you to have fun in game and min-max your real life, and I'm glad we took this moment. We'll see you next time.